In a video, members of the Malum cult, who worship the one they call the god of the underworld, are seen having fun with 4 teenagers. Then, everything turns into a night of horrific events when the members take the victims to a barn. In front of the throne marked by a pentagram, one of the girls is brutally killed and then fed to a pig. Fortunately, they are stopped by the police led by Captain Will Lauren. They save the other 3 girls and arrest 3 members of the cult, including their leader, John Malum. However, Will still feels guilty for not being able to save the girl who was killed. Officer Price says that thanks to him, the 3 girls are now safe and back with their families. Not long after, in the detention area, Will begins to hear a sinister whistling of the God song. Meanwhile, 2 other police officers are talking at the shooting range when both are shot by Will. At this moment, Will starts shooting anyone he sees until he ends up in a cell. When the officers arrive, he asks them to tell his family that he's sorry. After that, Will takes his own life, shocking everyone present. A year passes, and now Jessica, Will's daughter, is the one wearing the uniform. She visits her father at the cemetery and is surprised when her mother, Diane, suddenly appears. From their conversation, it's clear that they don't have a good relationship. After a while, Jessica leaves without noticing the symbol of the god of the underworld painted on the back of her father's headstone. In fact, the symbol is seen all over the town. This means that despite John Malum's death, his cult is still very active. Jessica eventually arrives at the old station, where she requested to be assigned to the last shift. There, she meets a rude cop named Grip Cohen. Cohen takes her to his office and explains that the calls have already been redirected to the new station, so she shouldn't have any problems during her shift. However, he reminds her that if anyone comes to her for help, she should send them to the new station. Later, he asks Jessica why she chose the last shift, to which she responds that it's the same as her father's. After learning that she is Will's daughter, he tells her that her father killed 2 of his friends. In turn, Jessica says she just wants to work quietly, and Cohen decides to leave her alone. Before he leaves, though, he reminds her to stay away from the detention area. Shortly after, when Cohen is gone, Jessica returns to the locker room. There, she notices that the only locked locker is her father's. She wants to open the lock but stops when she hears water running. As Jessica goes to check, she hears a ball in the hallway. She tries to follow the noise to the gym, where she suddenly sees a silhouette. Scared, she quickly turns on the light, but she sees no one. Just then, someone rings the doorbell and finds a homeless man in front of the station. He seems to be distraught because he lost his daughter, so Jessica offers to call a shelter for him. To her surprise, the man takes care of his business at the door and leaves. After cleaning up the man's mess, Jessica returns to her father's locker. She tries to open it with an extinguisher, but fails. At that moment, Jessica hears the phone ring and immediately goes back to her office. However, it turns out to be a prank call and warns the woman on the other line not to do it again. However, the woman continues to tease her. Annoyed, she goes back to her father's locker and locks it. Inside the locker, there is only a crumpled newspaper and their photo. Looking closer, she sees a hidden compartment and finds a hidden box, checking its contents. Jessica finds all the evidence related to the Malum case. Soon after, she hears the sound of a pig and discovers that someone left the animal in front of the station. At the exit, she finds the symbol drawn on the pig's back. But the strangest thing is that the animal is named Betty, the same name as the girl who was killed and fed to the pig before the police arrived. After leaving the pig in an empty room, Jessica hears noises from the other room, as if someone is entering the police station. When she checks, she finds the homeless man holding the evidence bag containing the girl's sandals. It turns out that the homeless man is the father of the poor victim who went insane after his daughter's tragic death. The man tries to attack Jessica, who has no choice but to restrain him and arrest him. But as she puts him in a cell, the door closes on its own. Suddenly, the homeless man attacks, making her drop her flashlight. Suddenly, the light moves from her to the homeless man, meaning there is someone else. Suddenly, the flashlight rolls toward her, and as she picks it up, 3 corpses emerge from the ceiling. Strangely, the door behind her is open, so she immediately goes out and closes it. Later, Jessica calls Cohen and tells him what happened. He scolds her for breaking his order not to enter the detention area, and he says that it's full of black mold that causes hallucinations. After that, she begins to clean up the mess created by the homeless man. At that moment, Jessica sees a picture of a relic. Reading it, she discovers that the god of the underworld was a biblical deity. She also finds a stick that contains all the recordings from the Malum case. She goes to get her laptop from her car and sees a woman thrown out of a car into the street. She decides to help her and brings her inside the station. While they talk, the woman reveals that she was locked up in a cell next to John Malum and heard that he was very happy with what he did to Betty. She tells Jessica that all 3 of them died that night. She interrupts her story when she sees something. Trembling with fear, the woman swears she won't say anything else and starts reciting some prayers. Suddenly, she returns to normal behavior, as if nothing had happened. When the woman leaves, the phone rings. The woman says she will kill her hostages if Jessica hangs up. It turns out that the cult has kidnapped the 3 teenagers again, the ones her father had saved earlier, before ending the phone call. The woman mentions that her father had started something very important, and they would finish it tonight. Jessica starts watching the recordings where she sees Betty begging for her life. At that moment, she receives a call from her mother. While they talk on the phone, a video suddenly shows up in which the cult begins to sing the hymn. Jessica can't stop it, no matter what she does. Terrified, she tries to run, but the station turns out to be locked from the outside, meaning she's trapped inside. With no other option, she returns to her office and calls the new station for help. However, the agent on the other line convinces her that she is the only hope for the 3 girls. At this point, a video of John's arrest and the 2 accomplices is played on her laptop, but even after being caught, they show no remorse. However, what catches Jessica's attention the most is the footage in which Will interrogates John. Checking the room, the footage captures the reflection of a demonic creature. Suddenly, someone puts a sack over her head and grabs her. Then she wakes up on a stretcher with John's body. After that, the girl finally comes back to reality. Officer Price and Officer Hudson have come to take the homeless man to the other section. While Hudson goes to the homeless man, Jessica asks Price what really happened with her father. According to him, Will was obsessed with the film, watching it all day, until he lost his mind. Later, he shows her the gun her father used that night. However, when she puts it back, Price returns with a devastated face, while Jessica sees her father aiming the gun at her. At that moment, she's in a barn, where John Malum baptizes her with Betty's blood. It is then revealed that Diane was once a member of the cult. At that moment, Jessica wakes up and hears the homeless man screaming and begs him to let him out. After she lets him go, the homeless man crosses the room where Betty the pig is. Soon after, Diane appears and scolds her for not telling her she would work in the old section. Jessica confronts her and demands the truth about the cult. Her mother admits that she was John's mistress. He told her that Jessica would be part of something bigger, and she believed him. She says that John had a plan, and Jessica asks what it is. Meanwhile, Jessica hears a woman screaming and tells her mother not to move while she checks. When she gets to the room, she discovers that the cult is already there. It turns out to be the same woman who was talking to her on the phone, which prompts Jessica to shoot her. But to her horror, more cult members appear and start chasing her. Trapped inside the gym, Jessica runs to her mother, but she's nowhere to be found. At that moment, the phone rings, and it's the agent from the new station. He claims to have sent a team to help her. However, the agent asks if Diane is with her, even though Jessica hasn't told him anything about her. It is then revealed that the person talking to Jessica is John Malum himself. Jessica asks where her mother is, but John doesn't answer. Instead, he simply declares that the god is coming. Later, the homeless man who wants to attack her appears, and he seems to be possessed. With no other choice, she is forced to kill him, while the cult members finally leave the gym. Jessica also sees Will, but he's just a ghost. After running out of bullets, she takes her father's gun. Following the sound of the hymn, Jessica reaches the basement, where the 2 accomplices of John are waiting, but what surprises her the most is that the throne of the god of the underworld is now in the basement, explaining all the horrors happening in the station. Just then, Jessica discovers that John is still alive and has a demonic appearance. To make matters worse, she is now cornered by both the dead and the living, as she sees the dead cult members and the police officers her father killed. Suddenly, everyone stops when the god of the underworld arrives. As they approach her, everyone starts singing that the demon will devour her soul. Jessica shoots him, but the god of the underworld is immortal. At that moment, John screams when the tentacled face of the god suddenly attaches to Jessica, and she regains her consciousness in the hallway. There, she confronts John, who is now possessed by the demon, and shoots him immediately. However, it turns out that she shot her mother, Diane. When she realizes what she's done, Jessica bursts into tears, and John tells her something in her ear, causing her to take her own life, and it's met with applause from all the dead. The film ends with Jessica dragged into the basement and brought back to life, sitting on her father's throne alongside the god of the underworld.